What's up? What's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meets Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meets Sperm. I am so excited for our guest today, Jen Edmonds, who is a yoga, Pilates, meditation, and breathwork teacher who specializes in fertility and women's health. During a long and difficult fertility journey of her own, Jen eventually found the practice of fertility yoga. This practice was able to ease her anxiety while trying to conceive, relieve chronic insomnia, rebalance a thyroid condition, and eventually it helped her fall pregnant naturally. She now runs an online business, Element Pilates and Yoga, and is helping women all over the world to overcome fertility challenges and find their way to motherhood. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise, I am so excited to talk. First of all, you're like our first yoga practitioner and you specialize in fertility. I'm so excited to pick your brain today. Let's just start with the basics. Like, what is fertility yoga?
So I get asked this question a lot, and I want to point out that it isn't a fancy form of yoga that I've invented or that someone has invented. It really is like traditional yoga that everyone is probably familiar with and has seen and been to classes of. But the special thing about fertility yoga and the reason that it's different is that we match what we're doing, our practices, our movements, to our menstrual cycle. So there are 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, as we all know, and each of those phases has a really specific practice attached to it. And it helps to get our hormones balanced. It lets our body move with more energy throughout the whole month. It is just a really lovely way of syncing with your life and your cycle.
Yeah, lovely. I want to get right into it then. Let's talk about the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle and how we can change our yoga practice to fit that phase of the cycle, because I feel like the cycle syncing as far as food we do that with exercise. So I'm so excited because it all makes sense, right? Like this is why we do it this way. So please, let's talk about the 4 phases and how to adapt.
So we'll start with the menstrual phase, which in my opinion, I think is the most important when it comes to trying to conceive. And the reason for that is that, we as women, we're brought up to believe that we are the same every day of the month. We have the same energy requirements. We can climb mountains. We can do whatever we need to do. But as we know, the reality is during our period, we don't have the same capacity for exercise and for energy output. So when you do have your period, it is so important to lean in to rest and just embrace that time where you can just take a step back. It'll help promote healing, allow your body to detox all of the previous month's buildup. And when we do our yoga practices during this time, they're so beautiful. They are gentle and restorative, and they really bring you back to you and your body. And we know, for women who are trying to conceive, this can be a really difficult time of the month if their period has arrived. So it's lovely that we have practices that can support women both physically but also emotionally at this time. After your period finishes and we move into the follicular phase, we then start to notice our hormone levels are increasing, our energy levels are increasing. So we work with that. Our practices get more energetic. We have more of that sort of vinyasa flow style of yoga where there's a lot more standing, the warrior poses that people are probably quite familiar with. So all of that helps to increase heat and energy in the body, which supports that increase of the hormones. And when we get to ovulation, 3rd phase, this is kind of the peak or like the main event of our cycle. So again, we are working with that energy, but at the same time, we also want to bring it downwards to increase that feeling of downward energy to help that ovulation happen. So we want to get lots of blood flow going to the pelvis, to the reproductive organs, and at the same time, starting to then balance out your hormones to prepare for the 2-week wait. And then, of course, we move into the 2-week wait or the luteal phase. So after ovulation has happened, we do want to start bringing that practice back down to a more of a restorative style. And not immediately, straight after ovulation, your hormone levels don't drop immediately. They slowly start to change. So we can work with that. And it might be that the first week of your luteal phase, your practice is still energetic, but less so than it was. But then as we're moving towards the last week and hopefully towards positive pregnancy test, that's where we bring the practice back to a really restorative phase again. We're working with helping to support implantation, again, increasing blood flow to the pelvis, the reproductive organs. And the thing that is so, so important during this time is on regulating the nervous system. And that's something that we do as well.
Yeah, I love this. I love this so much. And it mimics essentially what I tell people to do with their exercise regimens. So for a second, I was like, oh my God, is this going to be different? And I'm so relieved that it's not.
No, it's exactly the same. And I have a clinical Pilates and personal training background. So I have a lot of science, information swirling around in my brain. So when I first learned about cycle syncing, it was well before I became a yoga teacher, actually. So it really just flows on from all of that. And we should be syncing all of our exercise to our cycle, not just yoga.
Gosh, we should be syncing all of our lives to the cycle. Like
All of our
every
lives.
single piece of our life should be like, wouldn't that be just so magical? Like, that's the world I want to live in. So,
it's the future, the dream future, I hope.
yeah. So I am curious if, like, what do you think about hot yoga or like hatha yoga, like the more intense kind of yoga practices that I feel like there was a time in my life where I thought that that was something that I needed to just do consistently in my whole month. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it's a really controversial one. And whenever I do a post about hot yoga on social media, I probably gets the most amount of blowback from people.
Oh,
Look,
yes, because
I'm not a fan if you're trying to conceive, especially if you've been on the journey for a while. And the same can go for Ashtanga, which is the other quite intense variation, and Bikram, which obviously Bikram is hot yoga as well. Look, there's a time and a place for it. And it could be argued that during the follicular phase or during ovulation, it would be such a bad thing to do. But the problem is being in a heated room and doing intense exercise at the same time is incredibly stressful on your body. And whilst exercise, can be stressful in a good way, I mean, it helps us build muscle, it helps us improve fitness, it helps us adapt. But yoga classes are not 20-minute HIIT workouts, they are hour to 90-minute long practices. And if you are doing that in a heated room frequently, it's a lot of stress on your body. And it's a lot of potentially, adding to that release of cortisol and adrenaline, which then disrupts the balance of hormones that we're trying so hard to achieve during our trying to conceive journey. So I'm not a fan. I discourage my students from doing hot yoga or Bikram or Ashtanga on a very regular basis. If it's something that they really love, like I just said, it would be something I would do in the earlier stage and the middle stage of my cycle, but not every day. Let's say 2 to 3 times a week. And listen to your body. The beautiful thing about cycle syncing is the more you do it, the more you start to realize, okay, wow, that did not work for me at this time of the month.
Yeah.
And when you lean into that and when you start to, give your body what it needs, it just makes the world of difference. So look, not a fan, but we can argue it.
No, I am with you. I'm mostly not a fan, and I would agree that if you absolutely were to do them, to do like the more intense yoga workouts, do it in the right part of your cycle. So absolutely there with you. I also think that a lot of times women who are already stressed in other parts of their life tend to find or be attracted to these like more intense workouts. And I know from like doing enough like cortisol testing on these women to be like, yeah, no, this is like absolutely not the thing to rebuild your body because you are completely depleted. And it's so hard for them to believe me when I say, like, hey, just take it down a notch. Like, your body needs more restoration when it's in a depleted state. And doing these like more intense things are going to just make you more depleted. Like you're just defeating the purpose. They're like, no, but I feel my energy goes up from it. And I'm like, oh my God, because your body is releasing cortisol when you're in under intense levels of stress. So can you just like just say it from a different perspective, maybe, because maybe someone will hear this and believe you over me, because
Absolutely. And like I said, I do have an exercise science background. So I have seen it with women who don't just lean towards yoga, but they lean towards HIIT workouts and spin classes and things like that.
yeah.
And, you know, like we were saying before, there is a time and a place for all of these workouts. But if you are struggling with your fertility and you've been on this journey for a while and you're going down the route of perhaps assisted cycles, like the amount of stress that builds up over time. And, you know, speaking from experience as well, I developed chronic insomnia when I was going through my third round of IVF. And, you know, the thing that I really thought was a good stress reliever was doing these workouts, was going to the gym, trying to deadlift twice my body weight, going to a spin class, doing hot yoga. I felt great during these. But were they helping? And do they help women? And I don't think that they do. And like you said, it tends to be the very type A, the very highly stressed women that are drawn to these types of yoga. And that was definitely me. But I just think that this isn't the time in your life to be pushing yourself. Exercise is incredibly beneficial, but it's so varied. There is so much that you can choose from, and you don't have to smash yourself and feel absolutely exhausted to get the benefits from exercise.
Yeah.
And I think that we miss that. You know, we're sort of built up to believe that, you know, harder is better. You know, the harder you work for something, the better the results are going to be. But as we know, anyone who's tried to conceive for any amount of time know that that's not true. So please, listen to both of us. Know that there are way better options out.
Let's get into the mindset of this a little bit, because you touch on something that I see a lot, which is the type A personality, the super like, I need to control everything. I need to excel and be amazing at everything that I do. And the harder I do, like work at something, the more it should be successful. Like the whole mentality, right? And like I'm not including myself. I am a recovering type A, so I've been there. From years of hot yoga workouts, I have been there. So until like honestly, like for the 3 years leading up to what was essentially my crash, I was doing hot yoga like 4 times a week. And like for years, this was my thing. And I was like, oh, I'm on my period. I really need to just like power through it. And it's sort of like those spaces tend to feed more of our type A tendencies, right? So it wasn't until I totally crashed and like fell flat on my ass that I was like, oh, maybe there's a better way to do this. Like, what am I missing here? Because this is not normal.
I think that probably 90% of my students that come to me are this type of personality that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm never going to be the person that tells people that, you know, they need to relax more on their fertility journey. Honestly, you don't need to go there. But I find that, you know, it's a bit of chicken or the egg, you know, is someone highly strung because they are, or have they been trying to conceive for 5 years and they've been through so much and that has made them highly strung? Either way. about 90% of the women who come to me really do feel like they're in this kind of space. And the thing about yoga that I don't think any other form of exercise does quite so well is it's able to balance that mind-body connection in a way that I've not experienced with any other exercise. And I'm a Pilates teacher as well, and it just doesn't quite get there in the way that yoga does. So when you are sitting in that really highly strung kind of feeling, you're waiting for phone calls, you're waiting for test results, you can feel your fight or flight response being activated. Your heart rate increases, you're finding it hard to get a deep breath in. Yoga is one of those practices that really can help. And it really accumulates over time. The more that you participate in not even a full yoga session, but just doing 5 minutes of a gentle, calming breathwork practice, it does have these cumulative effects where you don't get so triggered by things throughout the day. You don't feel so anxious waiting for every little step of the journey to unfold. You start to trust your body a little more, and you start to trust your intuition a little more. And I think that is beyond crucial when you're trying to conceive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I appreciate that perspective so much, because I think that we do have just a lot of internal as well as external influences that are leading us on a different path. So
Absolutely.
I'm curious because and that, like, now that we're talking, I'm like, yeah, I kind of miss my yoga practice. I like veered towards other things. So I'm curious, like, what in your experience is that like special thing about yoga that supports the mind-body connection? Because yeah, that's like so intriguing.
So I think there's three things really. The first is it's exercise. And the benefits of exercise are extensively studied and well known. So we have the benefits of exercise: blood flow, circulation, all of these things will help in getting hormones to circulate throughout the body. It helps to balance out how hard your heart is working. It helps your immune system, all of the benefits of exercise. We know all of that. So you have that with yoga. But the other two things that it does that is, I think, a little bit more in depth than most forms of exercise is that it has this ability to regulate your nervous system. And the way we do that is we balance out energetic practices with restorative practices. So what this does is it allows your body to come into a place of rest. And if you think about how many times during your day do you actually stop and rest? Apart from going to bed at night, which, we often spend scrolling our phones until the very last moment. We're like, okay, I really need to get some sleep now. We don't allow our bodies to rest, especially during the day. So when you can set aside some time for your yoga practice, like I was saying before, these effects really do start to accumulate within your body. So you are not as activated into your fight or flight response as easily. And the third thing that yoga really incorporates well is the breath. And for anyone who's done a yoga session, they probably, look, I'd like to say 99 times out of 100 are going to walk out of the room feeling calmer than when they started. And a big part of that is the way that we use the breath. And if you think about all of your bodily functions, we don't have control over so much. We can't tell our bodies to ovulate. We can't tell our immune system to kick into gear. We can't tell our bodies to digest. Like, we can't do any of that. It just is automated. But we do have control over our breath at any moment during your day. And this is the single most powerful tool you have in helping to relieve that stress response. So the way that yoga is designed is that we use breath with every single movement that we do. We use it in stillness, and we use it to help calm the body and really regulate what we're wanting to do with our practice, and whether that's increase energy and increase heat, or whether that's to calm and restore and assist with rest. So putting it all together, look, I just wish I had invented this, honestly. It's just the best invention of all time, especially when it comes to women who are struggling to conceive. I just, it isn't magic, it's science, which is, works very well with my very left-brained type A personality. I want to know why things work. Yeah. And there is a lot of science behind yoga and why it works as well. So when you put it all together, it just has such an incredible effect.
Yeah. I love it. This was even on a personal level, I feel like now I'm like, okay, how do I reintegrate yoga? Because I'm like re-excited about it, you know? So I appreciate that because I feel like it's really easy to um like life gets busy and you're like, oh, I can do this workout and get the same benefits, but in a shorter period of time. This is my mentality.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
oh,
so
I'm too busy
true.
for like 90-minute yoga workouts, so I'm just gonna go do my 10-minute
Yeah.
thing.
And again,
Um,
that's going back to that whole idea of, well, harder means better. Like I have to work out,
yeah,
if I've only got half an hour, I need to do as much as work as I can. But we forget that it is also so beneficial to rest.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
hard one to get your brain to rewire itself on.
With that said, like, do you think that 20 minutes of a yoga workout is better than nothing at all? Or do you feel like, oh, you got to do the 60 minutes or you got to do the 90 minutes to really get all the benefits?
I would say 10 minutes is better than nothing at all. And honestly, if you can commit to 10 minutes a day, if you don't see a difference after 30 days, I would be very, very surprised.
Mm,
It's that easy and that simple.
yeah. Yeah. So, like, in terms of like the 10-minute type workouts, I've not really seen them at yoga studios.
No.
So do you just like do it at home on your own or something?
Yes. So I have like a mini course, a 10 minutes a
Okay.
day
Okay.
mini course for fertility yoga. So
Yeah.
it's 10 different videos that go for 10 minutes each, and they work through every stage of your cycle, days 1 to 5, days 6 to 9, etc. So
Mm,
that's the way I like to kind of introduce it to students and say, look, give this a go, do it for a month, see how it works for you.
mhm,
And, obviously I encourage them to do it every day, but even if you can't do it every day, let's try every second day.
mhm, mhm.
And then once they start to see the benefits and the difference that it's making in their life, that's when they go, all right, let's do a bit more than 10 minutes. I think we can go a bit deeper here. So
I love
that's,
it. I think everyone
yeah,
needs to do this. If you are struggling with fertility, you need to get on this. 10 minutes a
get on.
day, you got this.
Totally, but you're right. You're not going to find that at a yoga studio. And just touching on that, I'm going on slightly a little bit of a tangent. If you go to a yoga studio and you tell your teacher that you are in your 2-week wait, or you're about to have an embryo transfer, or you're doing your stims phase of your IVF cycle, they're probably not going to know what to do and what
Mhm.
to modify for you, because it's such a small little community around the world that teach fertility yoga. And, like I said before, it's not like we're teaching anything different, but it is specific to where you are in your cycle. So
Yeah.
if you are trying to conceive, and especially if you're going through assisted treatments like IVF, I would be very careful doing group sessions at a studio unless the teacher is quite familiar with what you're
Mm. That's a really good thing to note because it, at least in my experience, it's really easy to go to a group class and feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Like, here's everyone like pushing themselves to the max. And I know internally, I'm like, hey, this is the 2-week period. I'm supposed to slow
doing.
down. And then you feel like a jerk because you're not doing everything, or you're like in child's pose while every the teacher is like, what's going on? You okay?
Exactly. And so that is a tricky one. And I find that most doctors get a little bit funny around, advising patients to do exercise during the 2-week wait, probably
Mhm,
for that reason alone, because you just
mhm.
don't know what you should and shouldn't be doing. So
Yeah,
it is helpful when you can find someone who can just say, that's okay, we'll do this. And yeah, but it is hard to find.
yeah, yeah. I love it. I think this is gonna be something that I really feel like will benefit so many women and um just like all the benefits that you've laid out, especially if you're getting them in even 10-minute chunks, is like awesome. Like there's nobody who's gonna tell me that they can't integrate a 10-minute resting period into their
Exactly.
day. I'm not even gonna call it a workout. Call it a resting period.
Whatever works.
No, like honestly, I feel like that would actually make it easier for me to be like, hey, I'm gonna like build this into my schedule if I'm resting rather than I'm working out, right? Like that reframe helps me be like, oh yeah, I can see why resting would be beneficial.
Exactly.
So I'm
Exactly.
more likely to do it that way. So oh,
Mm.
I love it. So I know that you've talked about the some of the like mind body benefits like with anxiety and insomnia. So can you say more about those things?
Mm. I think when we're talking about those sorts of issues, it really comes down to a hormonal imbalance. And hormonal imbalances can be anything, right? From insomnia to thyroid conditions to, heavy bleeding and PMS. So we do have all of the benefits that I spoke about before when it comes to yoga. But when you can start to look at what's going on in your body, and for example, I had a thyroid condition. There are also practices that we can do to target specific issues that people have. So if you do have a very high level of stress in your life, and on top of that, you have trouble conceiving, it's very likely that you have, some degree of adrenal fatigue happening within your body. So there are practices that we can use to target the adrenals, to massage them, to support them, to send blood flow towards them. Same with the thyroid. And there are also lots of practices that we do where our body is inverted. So everyone's probably seen a downward dog. And inversion is anywhere where your hips are higher than your heart. And what happens when you invert your body is that the blood then flows down towards your brain, your pituitary gland, and your hypothalamus. And this nourishes those areas with fresh blood, and it allows the hormones to then flow throughout the body to where the hormones need to go more easily. And we don't need to be holding inversions for, 10 minutes. We don't want to do a handstand for 10 minutes or anything like that. But there are some really, really simple and gentle inversions that we can do to hold for, say, 5 minutes that really do start to have that hormonal balancing effect on the body. And again, coupled with the ability to help regulate the nervous system and to start using your breath to relieve stress and anxiety as well, that's how some of these conditions can start to not, I don't want to say be cured because, everyone's different, but I had a thyroid condition that I was medicated for many years, and I no longer take medication for it at all. It's gone. And the only thing that I ever did differently was my yoga practice. So, and it's not just anecdotally something that I've seen in myself, but in countless students as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. I love it. Like this has been so incredible to talk to you and just kind of like reignite my passion for yoga, which has always been there. It just like kind of goes in and out sometimes. And I'm hopeful that those that are listening in on this are really picking up on the ease of like integrating something like this to anything that you're doing on your fertility journey. I don't care if you're doing IVF, I don't care if you want to get pregnant naturally, I don't care if you're taking a bazillion supplements, like this can become a good like solid foundation to supporting whatever it is that you are currently doing.
I completely agree. And obviously there are so many things that work for people on their fertility journey. And yoga is one of many things that I think are wonderful complementary therapies to add in. But it's just so adaptable, and it's so simple. When we think about yoga these days, we often bring to mind people doing acrobatic poses on Instagram. And fertility yoga could not be further from that if it tried. Literally, some of the practices we do, we are lying down on the mat with a bunch of cushions. That is what we're doing. It's super, super gentle and easy on the body. So that's why I feel comfortable doing a lot of this work online, because whilst we always want to be safe and mindful of people's bodies, the practices are so gentle that it isn't really possible for you to do something badly or in a way that's not going to be helpful for you. So definitely, find something that works for you on your fertility journey. But if you are struggling and you're not sure, it can only help to give it a go.
Awesome. I loved chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me today. We will put a link to the fertility bundle for yoga in our show notes, as well as Instagram. Is it Instagram or TikTok that you prefer people connect with you on?
Well, I am turning 41 this year, so I'm going to say Instagram, but I'm trying to be a TikTok person, but it's going slowly.
I can definitely understand that. As much as I love TikTok and I love the new energy and all of it, Instagram is definitely still home base.
Me too. It's still my vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Are you Jen Elements Pilates Yoga on Instagram?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll link that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to hear all of your amazing tips this week. And yeah, so it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here as well. Super fun conversation. So thank you.
All right. Take care. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.